How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for today's episode of The Elite, I'm going to do a GOAT profile for Aaron Rodgers. The starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, of course, turns 38 today, and my intention with this episode is to not only point out what makes him a great quarterback, one of the best, not only what makes him an elite quarterback, but what makes him one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, not just a player that exists within this era, a player that will be timeless, and a player that many people will remember for just being one of the wildest quarterbacks that they've ever seen. I think that's probably the way I would describe it. The way I would describe Aaron Rodgers is the most controlled gunslinger I've ever seen. He makes throws that other quarterbacks simply can't make. They are pretty reckless because Aaron Rodgers is very bold and very confident in his abilities. But the whole thing about it is, in the same sense that a lot of players tend to talk trash and back it up, Aaron Rodgers is incredibly cocky with his decision making, but at the same time, he knows what he's doing, and he performs to such a level where other quarterbacks would, even though Aaron Rodgers is what you want to be, it is still dangerous for other quarterbacks to try to model Aaron Rodgers because his gameplay is incredibly dangerous for someone that would try to build their gameplay off of his, because they simply can't do what Aaron Rodgers can do. So, speaking of Aaron Rodgers, giving a little bit of background, he's originally from Chico, California. Right now, he's standing in at about 6'2", 225 pounds. He initially was a 5'10" high school quarterback, so he wasn't really recruited to play college football. He was recruited to play at the local community college to see if he could earn a scholarship to play somewhere else. He would go on to play for Butte Community College. In his freshman season at Butte, he would go on to lead this team to a 10-1 record as they finished as the second best team in the nation. He would throw 26 touchdowns as he would eventually be discovered by Jeff Tedford, who was the he was the head coach at Cal, who was only there to recruit Butte's tight end, but he would eventually go on and take Aaron Rodgers as well, and that would end up being the best decision that dude ever made in his career. He would go on to play his sophomore season at Cal, and this would go on to be Aaron Rodgers' age 20 season. In his age 20 season in the Pac-10, that's how old he is, he would go on to play 13 games in a season in which the Cal Bears would finish with an 8-6 record. They would go all the way to the Insight Bowl, where they would end up winning, and they beat the Virginia Tech Hokies by a field goal. And looking into the season itself, Rodgers would end up completing 62% of his passes, throwing for 2,903 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He ran for about 200 yards, didn't really run as much his junior year as he did his sophomore year. He finished with 24 touchdowns on the year. And then, of course, in 2003, he would establish himself as one of the better quarterbacks. He would come back for his junior season in 2004, and he would start 12 games for a Cal team that would finish with a 10-2 record. They would eventually lose in the Holiday Bowl to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. But looking at how Aaron Rodgers fared in his junior season, in which he caught a lot of the limelight playing for a team that finished as finished as a top 10 team in the nation, Aaron Rodgers would complete 66% of his passes, which is very good for a college quarterback at any time doing anything. He would throw for 24 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He would also run for an additional 126 and 3 yards. His 26 touchdowns and 2,700 yards would eventually lead to Aaron Rodgers being highly touted as a draft prospect, despite not really receiving that many accolades from the Pac-10 itself. However, he would go on and get drafted with the 24th overall pick in the 2005 draft. Just for reference, the first overall pick was Alex Smith, who I'm not sure is even in the league anymore. Other notable players, Roddy White for the Atlanta Falcons was taken 3 picks later. Thomas Davis, who won the Walter Payton Man of the Year, was taken by the Carolina Panthers with the 14th overall pick. DeMarcus Ware was taken by the Cowboys out of Troy with 11, and Sean Merriman was taken with the Chargers with the 12th overall pick, just to get a sense of how and Pac-Man Jones was taken with the 6th overall pick, just to give a sense of how long ago Aaron Rodgers was drafted. And ever since, he's been drafted by the Green Bay Packers, and he is called Green Bay, Wisconsin, his home city, for what is now his 17th season as a professional NFL player. And just looking at because of course, going in, just giving a little bit of context, Brett Favre was definitely on the team, and Aaron Rodgers was selected as a first-round pick to eventually take over for Brett Favre once Brett Favre could no longer carry on. And eventually they did get rid of him and move him to the Vikings to give Aaron Rodgers his chance. But for the first 3 seasons, it would really take some time until Aaron Rodgers would earn his starting spot. In his first season off the bench, in his age 22 season in 2005, he would play 3 seasons in a season where the Packers ended with a 4-12 season, and Mike Sherman's second to last season with the team. Aaron Rodgers would only complete 9 of 16 passes, throwing for 65 yards. He threw his very first interception in his rookie season, but he didn't throw a touchdown either. Not the best start. In his second season in Green Bay, his age 23 season in 2006, he would only go on to play 2 games in a season in which the Green Bay Packers would finish with an 8-8 record, winning 8 more games in the prior season. I'm sorry. His rookie season was Mike Sherman's last year. His second season with the team was Mike McCarthy's debut season. In Aaron Rodgers' third season, his age 24 season in 2012, he would only play 2 games that season, as well as the Packers would finish with a 13-3 record, winning the NFC North with Green Bay, or with Brett Favre as its quarterback. They would end up beating the Seahawks in the divisional round, 42-20, before losing in the NFC Championship to the Giants. And then the Giants would eventually go on to beat Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl that year. But following those 3 first years, once Aaron Rodgers finally got the okay in his age 25 season, as in the season that he turned 25, then you start to see Aaron Rodgers start to make his impact on the league. In his very first season, in his age 25 season, he would start all 16 of the games he played in a season where the Packers finished with a 6-10 record, winning 7 less games than the prior season in Mike McCarthy's third season as head coach. Aaron Rodgers would go on to complete 64% of his passes as a first-year starter, as he threw for 4,038 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions in his debut season passing. Not to mention that on the ground, he was able to rush for 207 yards and 4 touchdowns. His 4,200 yards, along with his 32 touchdowns, of course, would give him a 2 touchdown a game average. And even though the Packers didn't make the playoffs, many people knew that a player coming in and throwing 4,000 yards in his first season probably isn't the best of news for defenses everywhere. This would lead into his second full season as a starter, his age 26 season in 2009. He would go on to start all 16 games in a season in which the Packers would finish with an 11-5 record. They would finish second in their division. This would be the season in which Charles Woodson was named the Defensive Player of the Year. And in this first season in which Aaron Rodgers led the Packers to the playoffs, he would be named a Pro Bowler in 2009. That is the first time he was ever given an NFL accolade for his performances. But in 2009, in his first Pro Bowl season, he would complete 65% of his passes, as he threw for 4,434 yards through the air. On the ground, he would run for 316, giving him about 4,700 total yards of offense. He would throw for 30 touchdowns along with his 5. His 35 touchdowns in a season was the most at that point. He would throw for 7 interceptions. He would finish with the league's best interception percentage. And not to mention, in the same season, he was sacked the most times in the NFL. He was sacked 50 times. So despite all the trouble, of being sacked and being hurried all the time for the entire season, he still had the league's lowest interception rate, which I believe should go down as the first season where many people started to really get a sense of how good and talented he was. Once the Packers made the playoffs, they ended up losing in the wild card to the same Arizona Cardinals team that ended up winning the NFC, that made it out the NFC the year before, but they ended up losing to the Steelers. But following that 2009 season in which Aaron Rodgers first became a Pro Bowler, he would come back for his age 27 season with the team. He would go on to start all 15 of the games he played in a season where the Packers would finish with a 10-6 record. They would finish second in their division, and they would go on to make the playoffs. In the 2010 regular season, following his first Pro Bowl appearance, he would complete 66% of his passes, 65.7. This would be the first time he's completed at least 65% of his passes and in an NFL season. He would throw for 3,922 yards, and of course on the ground he would run for his 356. So that's 43 total 100 yards of offense for him. He, of course, would throw for 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He would finish with 32 interceptions for the third year in a row at the very least, which is at least a 2-touchdown average in the NFL, and he did this in 15 games. He threw 11 interceptions as well. And even though the Packers even though he didn't necessarily make the Pro Bowl, he would go on to create his legacy in another way this season. In the 2010 playoffs, the Packers would beat the Eagles in 5, or they would beat them by 5. They would beat the Falcons in the divisional round 48-21. They would end up beating the Chicago Bears in the NFC Championship. They would end up going to Super Bowl 45, where they would meet the Pittsburgh Steelers. And of course, in the Super Bowl game itself, Aaron Rodgers would go on and help the Green Bay Packers win the Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 45, Aaron Rodgers threw for 304 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns through the air. So because of that, he would go on to be named the Super Bowl MVP. That is the only time that Aaron Rodgers has won a Super Bowl, and he has won Super Bowl MVP to date. And they won that Super Bowl in 2010, or they won that Super Bowl itself in 2011, which was over a decade ago from now. And ever since, Aaron Rodgers has even had an incredible career ever since he's won the Super Bowl. Because by then, he was a one-time Pro Bowler who even that year more than likely should have made it that season. But once he was a title holder, many people saw Aaron Rodgers in a new light, seeing him amongst the best in the NFL, despite only having one Pro Bowl at the time. In his age 28 season in 2011, the very next season, he would go on to start all 15 games he would play, in a season where the Packers would finish with a 15-1 record, winning the NFC North for the first time since Aaron Rodgers had been a starter, the third time that they made the playoffs since he's taken over. He would go on to win the MVP the year after he won the Super Bowl, as he would finish with a 14-1 record in the 15 games that he played. He would complete 68% of his passes, which at that point was a career high. He would throw for 4,643 yards through the air. On the ground, he would go on and run for 257 yards, as he had quite possibly virtually 5,000 yards. I don't think he actually touched it. He would finish with 45 passing touchdowns through the air, as he had 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He was responsible for 48 touchdowns. He threw 6 interceptions on the year. He would lead the NFL in touchdown percentage, the first time he'd ever done so. He led the NFL in yards per attempt, averaging 9.2 yards per attempt. He would lead the NFL in quarterback rating and in QBR, which is a very separate ESPN stat. He would lead the league in net yards gained per pass attempt, and he would go on to lead the league in adjusted net yards pass per attempt as well. And following that season, like I said, he would be named a Pro Bowler. he was named to the NFL's first team for the very first time in his NFL career. All this while being named a Pro Bowler for the second time in his career. Once the Packers made the playoffs, they ended up losing in the very first round to the New York Giants, who ended up going back to the Super Bowl to beat the Patriots again. Following that season, this would lead to Aaron Rodgers' fifth full season as a starter. And in his age 29 season, he would go on to start all 16 of the games he played in a season where the Packers finished with an 11-5 record, winning the NFC North for the second year in a row. And this would be the fourth year in a row that Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy would lead the Packers into the playoffs. In the regular season following his first MVP season, he would complete 67% of his passes. His third season in a row, he's completed at least 65% of his passes. He would throw for 4,295 yards. This will be the fourth season in that 5-year span in which he had thrown for at least 4,000 yards on the season. The other season he was 5 yards. He was basically 78 yards short, essentially. On the ground, he was able to finish with 250 yards, as he would finish with 4,600 total yards of offense. Not to mention that in 2012, he finished with 39 yards through the air, 2 on the ground. So that is yet another season with 40 touchdowns, his second year in a row. He would also throw 8 interceptions. This would be the second year in a row he led the league in touchdown percentage. He would go on to lead the league in quarterback rate for the second year in a row, as it was at 108. The fourth year in a row, it was over 100. He would also lead the league he would also be sacked the most times in the NFL for the second time in his career. And ever since 2012, he has not led the NFL in times being sacked. In 2012, at the end of the year, he would be named a Pro Bowler, as he was named to the second team All-Pro that year. He was also... he would be recognized as one of the best players in all of football. Once the Packers made the playoffs, they would end up beating the Vikings by 2 touchdowns in the wild card before they eventually lost in the divisional round to the 49ers by 2 touchdowns. And this would be the season where the 49ers would go to face off against the Ravens in Super Bowl 47 in the Harbaugh Bowl in the Superdome, where the power went out. But of course, I digress. And following his age 29 season, this would lead into Aaron Rodgers' 6th season as a starter. His age 30 season in 2013, he would go on to play only 3 games in his 2013 season after he re-signed a 5-year contract. He would go on to break his collarbone for the season halfway through the year. Through the 9 games he played, he finished with a 6-3 record, as he helped the Green Bay Packers finish with an overall 8-7-1 record, winning the NFC North for the 3rd year in a row and making the playoffs for the 5th year in a row. This was the year that Eddie Lacy out of Alabama was the Offensive Rookie of the Year. In that season, Aaron Rodgers would complete 66.6% of his passes. This would be the 4th year in a row in which he's completed 65% of his passes. And this would be the 6th year in a row continuous that he would complete at least 60% of his passes, because even though he's throwing that well, people forget that it is tough to at least throw 60%. On the season, he would throw for 2,536 yards through the air. On the ground, he would rush for about 290. So that's 28 total 100 yards of offense for the 2013 year. On the ground, he was unable to run a touchdown, as all of his touchdowns came through the air. He would finish with 17 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions on the year. And after they missed Aaron Rodgers for the rest of the 2013 season, the Green Bay Packers would go on and lose in the very first round of the 2013 playoffs. They lost by a field goal to the 49ers. This would be the 2nd year in a row they lost to the Niners in the playoffs. This would be the year that the Seahawks ended up beating the brakes off the Broncos 43-8 in the Super Bowl. Following that, this would lead into Aaron Rodgers' 6th seventh full season his seventh season as the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And in his age 31 season, he would start all 16 games in a season in which the Packers would finish with a 12-4 record. And in his first game back from injury, Aaron Rodgers would go on to win his second MVP trophy, along with being named a Pro Bowler for the fourth time in his NFL career. He would also be given the Bart Starr Award for the very first, or the only time that he's been given it in his career. Not to mention, he was named to the first team All-Pro for the second time in his NFL career as well. Looking into the season itself, he would finish completing 65.6% of his passes. This would complete a 5-year streak in which he has completed at least 65% of his passes in all of the games he played. He would throw for 4,381 yards. This would be the fourth time in a 7-year stretch in which he would cross the 4,000-yard threshold. He'd also run for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. That'll be 4,700 total yards of offense to go along with his 40 touchdowns. This would be the third time he had done so, and the third time that he had done so in a 4-year span as well. And of course, while playing at his best, he would also throw for 38 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And like I said, you couldn't really get a lot better than Aaron Rodgers in 2014. He would have the lowest interception percentage in the NFL for the second time in his career since the first year that he was a starter. He would lead the league in adjusted yards gained per pass attempt for the second time in his NFL career. For the second time, he also led the league in net yards gained and then adjusted net yards per pass attempt for that year, as statistically Aaron Rodgers was really in a class of his own. And once the Packers went to the playoffs following his second MVP season, they would end up beating the Cowboys by 5 in the playoffs. Then they ended up losing to the Seahawks in overtime by 6 in the NFC Championship, right before the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl and ended up beating they ended up going to the Super Bowl and losing to the Patriots off of a interception by Malcolm Butler. But following that, this would lead into Aaron Rodgers' age 32 season, which of course would go down as his 8th season starting with the club or with the organization. And in the 2015 season, he would start all 16 games in a season in which the Packers would finish with a 10-6 record. They did not win the NFC North, snapping that 4-year streak, but they would continue their 7-year streak of making the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback. In the 2015 season, he would complete 61% of his passes almost, as he threw for 3,821 yards through the air. On the ground, he would go on to finish with 344 yards and an additional touchdown of his own. He would finish with about 4,100 total yards of offense to go along with his 34 touchdowns with his 32 touchdowns on the season. And then he would also throw for 8 interceptions as well. At the conclusion of the 2015 season, he would be named a Pro Bowler for the 5th time in his NFL career. And once the Packers made it into the playoffs, they would end up beating the Redskins, as they were formerly known, in the wild card round. Then they would end up losing in the divisional round to the Arizona Cardinals in overtime. 2015 was the year in which the Panthers would be the team that made it out of the NFC when Cam Newton won the MVP, and then they ended up losing to the Broncos in the Super Bowl. That was when Peyton Manning won his last one. This would transition, of course, into Aaron Rodgers' age 33 season with the club, which of course would be his 9th season as the starter of the team. And in that season, in his 9th starter with the team, in his age 33 season in 2016, he would start all 16 of the games he played in a season where the Packers would finish with a 10-6 record, just like they did the previous year. They would win the NFC North for the 5th time in a 6-year stretch. And of course, once they made it, or this would of course be the last year in what would be an 8-year stretch in which the Packers made the playoffs every single year. In that season, Aaron Rodgers completed 65.6% of his passes, excluding the lapse in 2015. This would be the except for that, this would be the 6th season in that 7-year stretch in which Aaron Rodgers had completed at least 65% of his passes. He would throw for 4,428 yards through the air, which would be the second most yards he'd ever thrown in a season compared to his first MVP season. Along with his 4,400 yards, he would also run for 360 yards. His 369 yards would be the most rushing yards that he's ever had in a season to date. He ran that alongside his 4 touchdowns. And alongside his 4,700 yards and 44 touchdowns, he would throw 7 interceptions. His 40 touchdowns would be the first time he's ever led the NFL in touchdowns. He's done it twice. And at the conclusion of the 2016 season, he would be named a Pro Bowler for the 6th time in his 9th year as a starter. Not to mention that he would also, that would be what he would take away in the 2016 season. Once the Packers made the playoffs, they would end up beating the Giants 38-13 in the wild card. They would beat the Cowboys by a field goal in the divisional round before they lost to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC Championship, right before the Falcons tragically lost to Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. This was the year in which Jordy Nelson was the comeback player of the year, for reference. Following this year, this would lead into Aaron Rodgers' 10th year as the starter for the Packers. In 2017, in his age 34 season, he would only go on to start 7 games in a season in which he had to sit out a good amount due to a shoulder injury that he suffered from Anthony Barr. He would suffer a collarbone fracture, which would rule him out for the rest of the season. However, in those 7 games he played, he would go on to complete 64.7% of his passes. He threw for 1,675 yards through the air. On the ground, he would run for 126 yards. All of his touchdowns in 2017 came through the air, as he threw for 16 of them, and he had 6 interceptions on the year. The Packers would end up not making the playoffs as they finished with a 7-9 record. This would be Mike McCarthy's last full year as the head coach, as in the 2018 year, Joe Philbin would fill in for Mike McCarthy after Mike McCarthy started that season 4-7-1. In that 2018 season, which would be Aaron Rodgers' 11th season as the starter, 14th season with the organization, he would go on to start all 16 games for a Green Bay Packers team that went 6-9-1. After Mike McCarthy had made the playoffs 8 straight seasons, this season was so bad that Mike McCarthy didn't even make it till the end of the season. But within that 2018 season itself, Aaron Rodgers would complete 62% of his passes as he threw for 4,442 yards through the air. At least up until that point, this would be the 8th time. Let me count that again. That would be the 7th time, that he would throw for at least 4,000 yards in an NFL season. In 2018, he would also go on to run for 260 yards and 2 additional touchdowns. So those 2 touchdowns, going along with his 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, would give him a crazy touchdown to turnover ratio. His 2 interceptions are the least amount of interceptions that he's had in a full season before. His 0.3 interception rate, that will be the 3rd time in his NFL career he's had the lowest interception rate of all starting quarterbacks that qualified in the league. At the end of the 2018 season, even though the Packers would not qualify for the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers would make his 7th Pro Bowl appearance, his 4th in 3 seasons. It would be also his 6th in an 8-year span. The 2 years he didn't make it, he was hurt. And of course, following that season in which Aaron Rodgers made the Pro Bowl and the Packers did not make the playoffs, he would come back for his age 36 season in 2019 for his 12th year as the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. In 2019, Aaron Rodgers would start all 16 of the games he played in a season where the Packers would finish with a 13-3 record, winning the NFC North for the first time since 2016. And of course, his 13-3 record would be the second best record he posted as a starting quarterback since the season he went 15-1, his first MVP season. In that 2019 season, Rodgers would go on to complete 62% of his passes as he threw for 4,002 yards. This would be the fourth time in his 12 years of being a starter in which he would throw for 4,000 yards. And of course, that's a very tough feat to really kind of consistently do. On the ground, he ran for 183 yards and a touchdown. So that'd be 4,200 yards of offense to go along with the 28 touchdowns that he put up, along with the 4 interceptions that he threw all year. Yet another season in which this is when he started to enter his the portion of his career where he started to throw a lot less interceptions, because even at this point, the last time he threw double-digit interceptions was 2010, and that's a very easy thing to do. And this would be the 9th year in which he's thrown single-digit interceptions, playing like full, and then in only 2 of those seasons he didn't play the full season. Aaron Rodgers would go on to make his 8th professional Pro Bowl team in 2019 as the Green Bay Packers qualified for the playoffs in their first full season under Matt LaFleur. They would end up beating the Seahawks by 5 in the divisional round before losing by 17 to the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And of course, following that 2019 season, Aaron Rodgers would come back for the last full season that he's played, his age 37 season, the most recent 2020 season, in which it was impacted by COVID in the sense where fans weren't allowed to go to the regular season games. But at the end of the day, every single team got to play all 16 of their games. And in 2020, not only did Aaron Rodgers put up yet another Pro Bowl performance to make 3 straight in 6 out of 7 years and 8 out of 10, he will go on to be named an MVP for the 3rd time in the decade, or like in a decade span, as he would go on to be one of the very few players in NFL history that has now won 3 NFL MVPs for what he was able to do this year. As he was also able to make the he was able to make his 3rd first-team All-Pro in his NFL career. And just taking a look at what he was able to do this most recent season, he would go on to start all 16 of the games he played for a Packers season that finished with a 13-3 record for the 2nd year in a row in Matt LaFleur's first 2 seasons there. And in the season in which he won the NFC North, Rodgers would complete 70.7% of his passes. This would be the first time in his NFL career, the only time he's played a complete NFL season and completed at least 70% of his passes. He would throw for 4,299 yards. This, of course, would go on to be the 9th season that Aaron Rodgers has thrown for at least 4,000 yards in a season. He also would run for about 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, of course, he would finish with 4,450 yards, and he, of course, would finish his 2020 season with 51 touchdowns on the season. He would lead the NFL with 48 touchdown passes thrown. At this time, this would be the 3rd time that Aaron Rodgers would throw at least 40 touchdowns in a season. This is the 2nd time that he led the NFL in passing touchdowns, and this would be the first time in his career that he's been responsible for 50 touchdowns himself. He would lead the league in touchdown percentage as he had a 9.1 percentage. He hasn't led the league since last year, because that's how that works. He would go on to lead the NFL in interception percentage for the 3rd year in a row and for the 5th time in his career. He would go on to lead the league in quarterback rating for the 3rd time in his NFL career, and he led the league in QBR as well. At the conclusion of the 2020 season, after winning the MVP, he would help the Packers beat and dispose of the Rams in the divisional round by 2 touchdowns. They would eventually go on and lose by 5 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady, and right before they eventually went on to win Super Bowl 55. And that is the last completed season to date. This leads us to where we are, as Aaron Rodgers right now is turning 38. This is following his last performance to date was their last home outing against the LA Rams. So far this season, he is leading a Green Bay Packers team that is right now undefeated at home and holding the best record in the NFC North. He threw for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns his last game out, as he even ran for a touchdown himself, giving him 3 total touchdowns of offense. And considering what he's been doing, what he's been through especially with all the COVID stuff, because he also had to worry about missing a couple of games because he falsely told the league that he was vaccinated against corona, even though he was immunized against COVID when he wasn't vaccinated himself. That ended up being a very egg on his face moment, but at the same time, right now he's back. He is very well on pace to have yet another 4,000 yard season, as he's completing 67% of his passes. So far this season, Aaron Rodgers has thrown exactly 23 touchdowns, and he's thrown 4 interceptions all year, with the lowest interception rate in all football. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is continuing to show that not only is he just one of the greats all time, but he's still one of the best football players to ever play, with years and a mountain of evidence to prove that, and he's still playing as if he's in his peak, making less mistakes than he was before, continuing to amaze people. And of course, he is doing so with the most skillful gunslinger performance in an NFL career that you've ever seen. I first want, and also to bring it all back around, Aaron Rodgers today, as he turns 38, is a Super Bowl champion, a Super Bowl MVP, a 3-time MVP, a 9-time Pro Bowler. He is the NFL record holder for the best passer rating in a season for 2011. He is the NFL record holder for the lowest interception percentage in a season from 2008. He is the NFL record holder for the most passes without an interception. He has thrown 402 consecutive passes without an interception. Aaron Rodgers is the fastest NFL quarterback to 400 career touchdowns, as it took him 193 games. He also has the NFL career record for the lowest interception percentage, not to mention that he also has the best career touchdown to interception ratio, because those ratios tend to run hand in hand. But with that said, I want to take this time to wish Aaron Rodgers a happy 38th birthday, and to really put everything together to really grasp how great of a player Aaron Rodgers is up until this point in his career, and to mention that he still is one of the best football players this year. He has a very solid case for MVP this season. And of course, with that said, I want to thank everyone once again, and hopefully there will be more to talk about next year. But with that said, I'll catch you with more tomorrow once all of today's exhibitions are done. Until then, thanks for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more with another piece tomorrow. And peace out. I'll catch you then.